Fuck these feral, man. They always top deeps.
Dude, I sacrificed everything. What have you given?
My personality, my friends, my personal goal, my strive for improvement, all of that to play HAVOC.
What?
What?
Dude, feral is way more
And you too can play HAVOC in Shadowlands. Listen, the spec changed, and all jokes aside, mastering HAVOC, as with any spec in the game, is not as easy as the community might have you think. You need talents, covenants, conduits, legendaries, rotations, and more. And you'll get all of this in this video so you can pick up HAVOC and quickly jump into the game, raids and dungeons, and start burning shit down. Don't forget to subscribe and enable those notifications, man. My astrologist said that this year our channel will grow even more if people subscribe and click the bell thingy, and that my will grow 2 more inches. She also said that only one of these two can happen, but I like to be a positive nerd. Speaking of positivity, how awesome is it that HAVOC has 2 current builds with variations? On the first row, you can go with Fellblade for the raid build, or single target output rather. If you haven't played this talent in the past patches, it lets you charge at your target, deal damage, generate fury, and has a chance to have its cooldown reset from Demon Blades or Demon's Bite. It's pretty good to maintain uptime on the target, although with the amount of mobility you have, that shouldn't be as big of an issue as it would be for other specs. Change it to Blind Fury if you want more AoE damage. Usually Blind Fury performs better in dungeons, but don't feel restricted when raiding. There are bosses that can benefit from more AoE output. We usually like to keep builds simple for our videos and straightforward for beginner HAVOCs or returning ones, but once you get more practice in, you'll be able to figure out what will work better. Moving on, to go hand in hand with Fellblade, take Demon Blades. These will replace your Demon's Bite, making your auto attacks have a chance to deal extra shadow damage and generate fury. Since you don't have to fill so many globals with Demon's Bite, Fellblade becomes a much better choice, and the argument works the other way around with Demon's Blade. These 2 talents combined work best for single target, which is mostly raids where single target output will be preferred. Alternatively, Insatiable Hunger will be your other choice when it comes to fury generation. This will make Demon's Bite hit harder and generate more fury. By extension, this means you will press it less while using more globals on spenders. This is usually picked with Blind Fury to go in dungeon scenarios or general AoE situations which can occur in some raids, fights, bosses, things. The builds are different and really fall down to you which you want to play, although you might find it more universal to go with a dungeon/AoE build if you cannot be bothered to swap talents often. Next up, a new talent that resembles the artifact ability quite a bit. Glaive Tempest comes to the spec and also makes it as the best performing option on this row. A short 20-second cooldown ability that does high damage in AoE but also very good in damage in single target. This works well for the overall build with Blind Fury and the other AoE talents, which you can definitely take in raids. Works well with a Fellblade build as well, although recently Trail of Ruin seems to outperform it in pure single target. Pair Trail of Ruin with Fellblade and Demon Blades and you will be a boss killing machine. Trail of Ruin is the same as it always has been, essentially adding Blade Dance into your rotation in single target with a pretty high priority. Next row is defensive/utility/survivability. Here we recommend Netherwalk. It's the immunity defensive of the spec that also boosts your movement speed by 100%. This not only allows you to move out of dangerous shit, but also lets you soak all sorts of mechanics like orbs in certain dungeons, charges on certain raid bosses, and so on. It's essentially the best "oh shit" button. Otherwise, play whatever you want, as long as you are making good use out of it. No sense picking Netherwalk if you never use it. On the 40 row, 2 options once again. No, not Essence Break, which was changed yet again this expansion. First Blood is the pure single target option, which you will probably only see in raids. It's very good in combination with the Trail of Ruin talent and essentially brings back the Blade Dance playstyle from BFA. For dungeons and AoE scenarios, go with Cycle of Hatred. With the new changes to I-Beam, aka the I-Beam rank 3 effect that gives 15% extra haste as you finish it, you want as many I-Beams out as possible, and matching this with Blind Fury and all of that makes sense, right? Right? You also will not have Blade Dance in your rotation anymore. How about that? For the level 45 row, it comes down to personal preference once again. Mash of the Glaive is a universal choice where you get 2 charges on Throw Glaive for some extra cleave damage, and potential snares on adds, mostly used in raids or M+ to help the tank get rid of those pesky necrotic stacks. Can be good to maintain uptime when on the move, when having empty globals, and so on. Unleashed Power makes your AoE stun more accessible and performs overall best in AoE scenarios, mostly mythic dungeons, while Fell Eruption is a single target stun. You would use this in situations where a priority target needs to be crowd controlled, usually specific mobs in dungeons that chase or fixate or cast, or some other raid boss adds that do similar things, in certain encounters anyway. Again, the versatility of this row offers you options for what you need as long as you make good use out of it. Lastly, Demonic! No surprises here, huh? Well, it has been nerfed to only give you meta for 6 seconds, but I-Beam has been buffed here and there, so overall the playstyle still feels very satisfying. Shorter windows of high burst and more rewarding if played properly. Demonic works for all content, both single target and AoE, but what's this? We are done with the talents, but still talking about them? We haven't moved to the next section? Is there another valid option? Wait, no! Momentum is back, baby! Kinda. Momentum is not a DPS loss. It offers more burst windows and can work really well with a single target build, although I have noticed some top M+ HAVOCs use it in dungeons as well. It is worth mentioning that Momentum is the epitome of high skill cap playstyles, at least when it comes to HAVOC. It's what drew me into the spec initially, but if you cannot pull it off, it's better to just play Demonic, since right now it doesn't seem Momentum outperforms Demonic to an extent where the output is worth the effort. And yeah, it outperforms Demonic, but by a very slight margin. Secondary stats changed in Shadowlands thanks to corruption and 400% haste builds. Now there's a soft cap or diminishing returns once your stat reaches 35%, unless they change the cap again depending on when you watch the video. With that in mind, you don't want specific stat breakpoints. You don't want to funnel your gear heavily into one stat, since it will lose value eventually. Eye level is still king, hence agility, and a healthy second will be haste followed by versatility, then crit, and lastly mastery. This is a rough idea of what you could have starting off, but don't kid yourself. Your stats will change into maybe something like this, where haste can take a dive and crit rise up. This means that no stat priority will ever be universally good for everyone. If you really want to know what the best min-maxing option is, sim yourself with tools such as raidboss.com, and the same goes for any other consumable you will see in this section. There are 3 weapon enchants you could use. One of them should always be Celestial Guidance, works good in all situations. Your other option can be Sinful Revelation if you want to boost your single target damage, or Lightless Force for AoE. Eternal Skirmish will be your chest enchant of choice with the Heavy Desolate Armor kit, followed by the Eternal Agility enchant for your boots and Fortified Avoidance on your cloak. The cloak enchants are purely defensive and you cannot really sim for them, but Avoidance helps you dodge AoE spells that are a common occurrence in raids and to some extent in dungeons as well, so it's pretty good. In keeping with the stat priority, Quick Jewel Cluster will be your ideal gem and the Tenet of Haste your ring stat buff. And also, in keeping with your stat priority, you can change these based on what's best for you. The Potion of Spectral Agility is the universal choice if you don't want to be bothered with too much min-maxing. But if you do, Phantom Fire for single target and Empowered Exorcism for AoE are better choices for those specific situations. The flask is one and only Spectral Flask of Power! Sorry, always wanted to be Palpatine in a different life. Your oils of choice, you dirty bastard, will be Shadow Core Oil, which coincidentally adds more damage to the Phantom Fire potion. Last but not least, for the food, go with the Feast of Gluttonous Hedonism for the agility buff, especially in raids when it doesn't cost a kidney to keep up, or the Tenebrous Crown Roast aspect for haste, also cheaper. Right now, excepting Necrolords, all three Covenants are good for Havoc, with Kyrian being best for M+, while Venthyr and Nightfae excelling more in raids and being still decent for Mythic dungeons. Nightfae can be better for progression since you gain access to the 2 potency conduits quicker than other Covenants. However, the meta seems to be split between Venthyr and Nightfae fairly even, with some Kyrians lost in the background. We will recommend going Venthyr and the Nadia Soulbind for the Thrillseeker conduit, which just makes the spec play really nice and feels great overall. Sinful Brand is also good in both single target and AoE scenarios, making the choice a pretty solid one overall. But keep in mind, the meta is not as strict as with other specs in the game, so you could go with what you personally like more, the differences will be very minor. As for the conduits, Growing Inferno is a good overall potency conduit to get. Works well in single target but shines in AoE. Relentless Onslaught is incredible in single target if you go with the Cycle of Hatred talent, since the extra procs of Chaos Strike will work towards refunding Fury and reducing I-Beam cooldown. There are a few good trinkets you can use and a lot more that are decent, and you can find a simulation of their performance on websites such as bloodmallet.com. A few worthy mentions start with the Darkmoon deck Voracity, especially early on. This trinket will outperform a lot of similar and higher eye-level alternatives. The biggest reason to get this is because it's just easy. Just buy it from the auction house. Overcharged Anima Battery is another really good choice to go for and works well when you pair it with your cooldowns for even more haste, mostly for AoE. Lastly, on all of the sims, Phial of Putrefaction is number 1, if not pretty high at the top, and considering how fast-paced the spec is, it's still a little surprise. To close it off, Hateful Chain is another really good trinket and easily accessible right now since it drops from Sludgefist, a relatively easy boss to get down. These are not the only good trinkets, and once again, sim if you really want to know what the best choice and combinations for you are. Otherwise, just wear the highest high-level stuff you have. As for the Legendaries, 2 of them stand out for the 2 main builds we have been talking about so far. Chaos Theory performs the best with the First Blood talent build and excels at melting down single target encounters, so you will end up using this mostly in raids on pure single target scenarios. Definitely the de facto single target option, but maybe not the best if you want a general one and not having to farm a second one, which is definitely Collective Anguish. That makes your I-beams summon a Vengeance Demon Hunter to also use Fell Devastation. This works best with the Cycle of Hatred talent build that maximizes the amount of I-beams you put out, hence the value of this legendary. This is ideal for Mythic Plus dungeons but can work in certain raid fights with more than one target, and if you have to only craft one, craft this one. At least this is what we recommend. For the purpose of consistency, we'll be referring to the Fellblade Demon Blades, First Blood and Trail of Ruin build as the single target build, and the Blind Fury, Insatiable Hunger, Cycle of Hatred as the AoE or multi-target builds. For the opener, pre-cast Immolation Aura, cast Fell Rush to enter combat, use I-Beam to trigger meta, Death Sweep next, cast Metamorphosis, Death Sweep again, and I-Beam after. This is the standard single target opener you do to maximize the cooldown reset from meta and using your pre-combat position to the max. Metamorphosis is the most important ability to cast on cooldown, making it at the top of the priority list, followed by your Covenant ability. Sinful Brand only if it's not already up from using Metamorphosis. Blade Dance or Death Sweep next, Fellblade if under 80 Fury, I-Beam after, Chaos Strike or Annihilation while above 50 Fury, Fell Rush and Throwglaive as fillers, when nothing else is available. Note that with the new rank 4 of Metamorphosis, you want I-Beam on cooldown before you pop the big boy, so it can reset it just like the BFA Azurite trade did. If you are running Glaive Tempest, simply hit it right after meta and keep it on cooldown at the top of a priority list otherwise. Multi-target priority is similar to the single target, and it actually depends more on the pack you engage, since we assume you will be using this in dungeons with the AoE build we recommended. Since you will be playing Blind Fury, you want to make sure you never cap on Fury as much as you can when you I-beam. Ideally, hit it as close to 30 Fury as possible, and if keeping it off cooldown for a few seconds will guarantee you would be hitting more enemies as they would enter the combat, then save it, otherwise just use it on cooldown. Same arguments apply to Glaive Tempest and Blade Dance as well, which will be at the top of your priority list when you can make sure you will hit more targets. Immolation Aura needs to be on cooldown as soon as possible, and other than this, you spend your time generating Fury and spending it with Chaos Strike when all of the above are on cooldown. Well, one note to be made that with very high haste builds and when gear becomes more available, it's very possible that Blade Dance will go out of your rotation even in AoE if you play the Cycle of Hatred talent, since just getting more Chaos Strikes out means you will be getting more I-beams out in a short amount of time, giving you more overall damage than using Blade Dance. That's a little bit hard to sim and figure out, so keep your eyes peeled on the Fellhammer Discord for more details. Otherwise, Chaos Strike will work towards getting you faster I-beams, which give you more demonics and stronger Blade Dances and so on and so forth, despite what we just mentioned. We won't go into momentum since our guides focus more on the basics and helping people pick up the spec quick and easy. Momentum might deal slightly more damage than demonic, but only if played right, and that's difficult even for the top players, but doable, and you can find those top players in the Fellhammer Discord channel like we just mentioned. Players such as Kibo, who is the author of the Wowhead HAVOC guide, and Ward Up, similarly for Icy Veins. These guys go more in depth with the spec covering stuff we didn't include, since we can spend all day talking about HAVOC. Cheers guys for doing awesome, solid work for Demon Hunters everywhere. Special thank you to our Patreons. Guys, you are with us all the way and we definitely appreciate it, and it enables us to do a lot more cool things, so hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. And dear viewer, if you're interested in supporting us a little bit more, obviously it's not required, but we do appreciate it very much. You can check the link down below to our Patreon page where you can find some interesting goodies. And of course, always check us on our twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline stream, where we stream 5 days a week and you get to see us play all sorts of classes and dungeons and raids with you. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.